The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And guys, I don't know if you celebrate, but guess what tonight is? The NFL Awards. Does anybody actually watch this stuff?
I don't.
Do you watch the NHL Awards?
I don't even watch the NHL Awards at all. I don't think I watch any award show. Sports related, music related, movie related, TV related.
I'll tell you what, you're missing out. Now, not that I watch it, but I do watch social media, and social media apparently watches everything that's going on all the time. So it's like I'm watching it. At the Grammys, Killer Mike.
Don't know who that is.
Of course you don't. Killer Mike swept the rap categories. Best artist, best album, best single. And then immediately got arrested at the venue, shortly after leaving the stage. I'm not going to lie, that's a power move right there.
Yeah.
That's a power move. We just got done talking before we started recording about how there was a stunt pulled during a Mark Normand comedy set recently.
Oh, yeah.
No. This is how you stage something to go viral. Whatever internet company cooked up the Mark Normand thing, get arrested at a place where you just won a bunch of awards, everyone will know about it one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
I just think award shows, who are they for? Players probably aren't at home watching that, are they?
No.
The players who are there probably don't care much about the award they're about to win, right?
No.
I mean, I think if you ask them when they're 40, they'll look back and go, yeah, it was kind of nice to be recognized as the defensive rookie of the year. Don't you think all of them would sacrifice some BS kind of made-up award to be playing in a Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Pro Bowl. No one gives a shit about the Pro Bowl or that being a part of a player's resume. It's you think that is going to help Gardner Minshew get more money because he was a Pro Bowl this year.
Well, it's
one-time Pro Bowler, Gardner Minshew.
It's another one of those things that points to the idea that you shouldn't you shouldn't as a player ever allow that to be negotiated into your contract. That there's a bonus to be had or something to be made for the fact that you made a Pro Bowl, because it's totally subjective and meaningless. Although, if I am trying to be an ass about this, right, it is funny watching two AFC East quarterbacks not named Josh Allen go into the Pro Bowl, participate in the accuracy competition, and fail miserably when it comes to the skill set. I mean, Chris, it's ugly, right?
Oh, yeah.
And hilarious. We laughed at Mac Jones. We laughed at Tua. We laughed at all of the memes that came out of that. Then Tua went on to do that Paramount Plus commercial, where the whole premise of the commercial that he didn't have the arm strength or the accuracy to get the hook over the wall so they could pull themselves up.
That makes no sense.
You want to talk about people not negotiating things into their contracts? Who signs that? What quarterback in the NFL signs up for that?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Tua has yet to receive an extension, so he needs the money.
He needs the cash. So the NFL awards are going to happen tonight. The results will already be known by the time you guys are listening to this podcast. It would be cool if they give the award to Josh. They're probably going to give it, right, to Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
Which is hilarious because he flamed out as a quarterback just awfully in the playoffs once again.
But I don't think they take that into consideration.
Sure, of course not. Of course they don't. He didn't lead the league in touchdowns. He didn't, Josh Allen probably will, there's a reason he's he's in the conversation. It's because he led the league in touchdowns scored. He also had a lot of turnovers. And I guess my point is okay, so if he can lead in scoring and still turn the ball over more than anybody, Isn't that like, doesn't that tell you he's even better than everyone else? If he can accomplish this while also being a turnover machine, you should all be terrified of the day that he stops doing that. Because if he does, if ever, just once, one shining moment of clarity where he has a season that he doesn't lead the NFL in turnovers, you're all in trouble. I've said it before. It's like that Billy Madison moment when he realizes he can catch the ball and that he's bigger than every kid he's playing against. Yeah, it's a nightmare. But until then, I understand. I get it. I just, like, people make the argument Patrick Mahomes probably deserves it. And it's like, you know what? Maybe he does. But also, you don't get to have that, what they're calling the flu game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my favorite is the Comeback Player of the Year award and all the conversation that's going on around that. It's hilarious if you like detritus and if you're just petty. Because, like, I have a video that I'm going to retweet. I bookmarked it, Chris, so I could remember it for this moment. When inevitably Joe Flacco fell on his face in a meaningful game. And all of the guys, and it's funny because it's always the same guy. Like, it's always the same looking guy. It's a fat, bald white dude with a beard, but bald head, with his sunglasses on inside of his own home or inside of his vehicle when the sun's really not that bright. Yeah, like single shot. What do they call that, Chris? When it's like straight on camera view. Like, what is that called?
The single shot?
Single shot? In a single shot, just yelling into their cell phone.
So you're talking about Stavi?
I'm talking about now. Just yelling about how Joe Flacco deserves to be Comeback Player of the Year. Chris, can you give Joe Flacco's 2023 stats a goog?
Yeah.
I want to see the games he actually played in. Pro Football Reference probably lays it out the best. His 2024 game log. It's hilarious to me that this is even a conversation. Like, there's people out there who genuinely believe that a guy who got off the couch, had a handful of decent games for a team that essentially walked into the playoffs and just got blown out. Right? I'm supposed to make him, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. 5 games.
Played in, well, there's his stats in the top right there.
1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So it's not like he was perfect. His QBR overall was 48.2. That's your Comeback Player of the Year. Although, Chris, it is Cleveland.
Yeah.
Right? But for them, that's good. Guys, I understand. For you, that this is monumental for you guys. Because you actually won a handful of games, and now you think this guy's amazing.
I think it's the yardage per game.
Well, what I love is he didn't have a single game without at least one turnover.
That is true.
But go on. Tell me how great he is. He's Joe Flacco, guys. So if and when Damar Hamlin wins it, know that I'll be out there on Twitter just waiting for all of the conspiracy theorists, the fat bald guys with cell phones that someone needs to take away from them. Again, the sunglasses might be the most enraging part about it. You're inside. And based on your lack of hair, you're not cool. Like that, I wear my sunglasses at night. Like, I think that song was written by guys who were aspiring to be cool, right, Chris?
Yeah. Corey Hart, he's Canadian.
Yeah, these guys wish they could be Canadian. That's idiots. The NFL award shows tonight. Nobody cares except for the detritus that comes after. Right? It's not whether you win or lose. It's how you soak up the misery of people who are actually dumb enough to care. I feel like you could apply that label to most things in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is interesting and yet falls into this same category is something that we Bills fans have been rolling around in, or at least some of us and some of our local media outlets have been rolling around in like a dog that found something that stinks in the backyard.
Like that cocktail in front of you?
Chris, it looks like something you found in a puddle in the backyard. Guys,
It
Chris
does.
has poured me a glass. There's a brackish liquid in it. It's kind of got an orangish brown hue to it. There's clearly things floating in it, which tells me you put egg in there. Or something. Oh, and it smells like whiskey, which is bad because whiskey doesn't go with things that are creamy. This is going to be right up there with that Whiskey Millionaire. I remember you made me that drink, Chris, and the first thought that popped into my head is if I was an actual millionaire, I would pay a hitman to kill whoever came up with this. Down the hatch.
Words.
I don't know if I want to take a second sip or throw it in your face. It's a weird drink that hits your palate funny, and it's tangy, and then somewhere along the way you get a hint of liquor, but it's immediately just sour again. It's like a roller coaster in a glass, and it ends on just this flat note. There's no flavor lingering in my mouth right now. Chris, what am I drinking?
The name is of this cocktail is stupid. It came out of a Los Angeles cocktail book. I watched a video on it this morning. It's very basic. It's 2 ounces of bourbon. I use Buffalo Trace. 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. 3/4 of an ounce of orgeat syrup, which that's an almond syrup.
Okay.
And that's it. Shaken, poured out, served up.
See, now that you're describing this, here's what I'm thinking. The almond gives it like this nutty base layer. But it's kind of like when you take a dump and you hit it with that like lemon scented Lysol spray. It's that thing of you're not covering it up with the lemon. In fact, the lemon hits you when you first walk in the room, but that base note hits you is like it comes in. And then eventually the lemon kind of creeps back into your nostrils. So it's like this weird flavor. Like I said, it's a roller coaster of flavor, and I don't know whether it's good or bad. Like the bourbon definitely adds to that. I think the bourbon might be the thing that rounds the whole thing together.
You ready for the name?
What?
The name of this cocktail is called Baby's First Bourbon.
Again, if I was an actual millionaire, I would find all these influencers and all these liquor enthusiasts who come up with these ridiculous names and these ridiculous cocktails. And I would have them all just disappeared. Like, not even killed. Just kidnapped in the dark of night, put in a van, trafficked to an airport, flown overseas, and left somewhere outside of Istanbul with no passport. That's it. Like that's where they would all end up if I had the liquid assets to do it.
Is it the worst cocktail you've had?
No, the Whiskey Millionaire still holds the title. This isn't even bad. It's just
bland?
No, it's not even bland. That's the problem. It punches you in the mouth because of the lemon. It's almost like a thing where it's like you're trying to eat Neapolitan ice cream in a cocktail form. Neapolitan has 3 very distinct flavors, and you get them all like they're not blended. They're each like you hit this band, then this band, then this band. This cocktail is the same way. You take a sip of it and you immediately get punched in the mouth with the lemon. Then you get the almond. Then the lemon comes back, and then it has a little bit of whiskey finish, but because of everything else, there's no lingering flavor. It just disappears from your palate entirely.
Let me ask you this. Do you think your thoughts on it would be different if I had used something 100 proof or more?
I think a stronger bourbon would have given this a more pronounced profile. I do think that.
There you go. Well, I use Buffalo Trace. I wanted to use a quality bourbon.
Because it makes you pucker, and at the same time, you're like, there's nuts in here.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Well, I think Buffalo Trace has a nutty tone to it to begin with.
You know what else has a nutty tone to it? Everybody on WGR who spends 20 to 35 minutes out of a 5-hour program, maybe even more, trying to dissect what the hell Stefon Diggs is saying in public. Like, this is the end, guys. We're at the end here, and I don't understand what we're doing. It's exhausting, to be honest. if I'm trying to follow you guys as a fan base, if I'm trying to follow the local media, the national media, it seems like everybody and their mother wants Stefon Diggs to not be on this team except for Stefon Diggs, Josh Allen, and Brandon Beane. Those are the three guys who want Stefon Diggs to be around. And everybody else is trying to engineer ways and reasons for it not to happen. I don't... Okay. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, Chris has taken the liberty of basically transcribing his entire statement to NFL Network that started all of the hubbub, which was already rolling but really got things moving. A little fire under it, if you will. Brought it to a simmer. And out of the entire statement that's on your screen right now, I look at this, Chris, is there anything you pick out? Is there a sentence that stands out to you?
Not really.
Anything here that's remarkable from anything that you don't think Stefon Diggs would say?
No, a lot of the media picked up on the last sentence. I can't tell you what the future holds, but I'm still being me.
Okay. Now, I had to have a conversation, for those of you who already listened to our Super Bowl show, you maybe understand a little bit of it, but I had a conversation with someone very close to me recently. And the thing I tried to tell them is that looking at the future is pointless. I'm kind of it's this weird thing, and I think I'm this weird... What is that from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? He was some kind of rare mutant, too rare to live, too weird to die. Whatever the quote is, I'm Dr. Gonzo. It's this thing of I've got an ego and I'm a narcissist and yet I'm also a nihilist. I believe that nothing matters because eventually across a long enough timeline we're all going to die. We're going to die, we're all going to be forgotten, and everything that we did and everyone who might have... Not only will the things that we do, the mistakes we make, the things we accomplish, will they not just turn to dust and ash and be forgotten? So will anybody who might remember them. Most of us are highly unremarkable. History will not remember us. The people that we think will carry our banner and remember us and care for, they too will be forgotten. And eventually the world just moves on. Billions of people have lived. Only 1,000 are remembered throughout history. But there's a freedom in that. So while you can have an ego about today, and you can have a sense of narcissism about where you are and what you think you are, and how you think you fit into the world around you, you can also acknowledge the fact that everything is pointless, and see the freedom in that. Stop looking down the road and just look at what's in front of you, and enjoy it for what it is. Stefon Diggs sounds a lot like a guy who sees the world that way, right? Like he is don't get me wrong, he's a star wide receiver in the NFL. I've only seen one or two of those guys who isn't a me guy, right? Like Larry Fitzgerald, probably one of the only guys, Chris, that you can say as a wide receiver, definitely seemed like an totally unselfish human being, right?
Also, never celebrated a touchdown in his career.
Okay, see? Wholly unselfish human being. Meanwhile, Stefon Diggs had two women at the same hotel on the same Valentine's Day because he felt like he could get away with it. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not bagging on the guy. I'm just saying, I see you. Ego and narcissism is a hell of a thing. And so with that, I see him and I understand. I speak his language. All you can do is look at what's right in front of you, unless you want to drive yourself crazy. You believe you're the center of the universe. You believe you're the baddest man on the planet. At the same time, you can't be bothered to look down the road because down the road doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I know what I want. I know where I will be. All I can do is be where my feet are. In fact, isn't that what he said today talking to Kay Adams?
Yeah.
Okay, literally those words. All I can be is where my feet are now. And that is how I know he sees the world the same way I do. And his place in it the same way I do. And so with that in mind, all of the narratives flying around and the time that we spend dissecting semantics about this, it's exhausting. I mean, Josh Allen goes on Pat McAfee and talks about how much he loves Diggs, like family. Diggs goes out there and says glowing things about Josh Allen. They both acknowledge it's a business. And if you want to be cold about it for a second, Chris, if you can pull up Stefon Diggs' career stats, they're not exactly over. Like, he didn't have a glowing year. He's also aged. He's reached the point as an athlete where, there we go, right there. He's reached the point as an athlete where you sometimes just don't have it right now. Like, look at this. He gets to Buffalo and he has his first 1,000-yard season in 2018 with Minnesota. And that's where the trouble started, because he had a second 1,000-yard season despite them trying everything they could to marginalize him. And he said, okay, fine, get me the hell out of here. They get him to Buffalo, and he has 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons.
Not even 1,000 yards, over 1,100 in each of the seasons.
Every single year. We're here complaining about how he underperformed as fans because we pay attention to the micro. We have to. It's how we live. It's the analysis, the level of detail we're paying to the attention to detail we're paying to all these things. It may feel bigger, though, than it actually is because 1,100 yards and 107 receptions. That's like what else do you want from a guy? Chris, who wouldn't kill to have that talent on their team?
Every team would enjoy that.
Everybody would like a guy with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1,000-yard, consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. And he is something of a safety blanket. Now, did his production drop off? Sure. He went from having back-to-back 11 touchdown seasons to only 8. Now, he had a rough stretch the back half. I'm not going to lie to you. We all saw it. I don't need to dissect that. You could understand why people would be inclined to go, well, he faded at the back and blah, 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 and maybe he's washed and his cap hit and the Bills
I don't think he faded.
No!
Because I'm looking...
Go to the game logs. Well, this is it. So
I'm looking at his receptions over, like, his first year here in 2020, 127 catches.
So click playoffs.
That was his best year. But then the last 3 years are 103, 108, 107, all within, 5 catches of each other.
So go click the playoff tab. There we go. So he hasn't scored a playoff touchdown for Buffalo in 3 years. Nobody talks about that, though. Right? Everyone goes, well, he disappeared at the end of the season. Okay. Well, he hasn't shown up in years. Last year was his most successful playoffs. 149 yards between 2 games. That's it. We're not talking about some transcendent talent in the postseason. Why? Because teams target that guy and literally take him away and make everybody else be the reason that they win. And it works. To me, that's not a Diggs problem. That's an us problem. Stefon Diggs shouldn't be penalized. He shouldn't be penalized. Right? In our minds. Because he doesn't show up. Because every team goes, oh, well, at the end of the day, we know he's the straw that stirs the drink, and we just need to make these other collection of We need to make sure, Chris, that Trent Sherfield doesn't wreck the game. It sounds like a tall task, huh?
Yeah.
We have to get out of this place if that's where we want to be, and that's not a Diggs problem. We should be lucky to have him. Also, I think everybody has now banged this drum, but realistically, it would take a wild, 3-team NBA-style trade to remove him from the roster. If you want to look at the money that we're talking about here.
Can you even trade him?
No. Holy shit, no. Trade? If anything, you're better off restructuring him and getting a $1.3 million added back to the cap. Fuck. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Everyone going, whoa, we don't need him and we don't need the money. Who are you going to go get? T. Higgins? Do you know who T. Higgins wishes he was? Stefon Diggs. This is like that Family Guy episode where it's like, oh, hey, Peter and Lois sit through the presentation about they sit through the presentation about what do you call those? Timeshares.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, okay, you made it to the end. You can take your pick. A boat or the mystery box? And Lois is like, well, obviously we take the boat. And Peter's like, no, but wait. Let's take the mystery box. There might be a boat in there. All of these people who go, don't worry, guys. We can just go find another guy in the draft. Don't worry. We can just go find another guy in free agency. When is the last time the Bills had a 1,000-yard receiver out of either free agency or the draft, Chris? Before Stefon Diggs.
First name that comes to mind for me is Stevie Johnson.
Okay.
Who was a, 7th-round pick?
A 7th-round draft pick. And that's like saying, oh, Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. You can find him anywhere. How many wide receivers get drafted in the top 3 rounds that just flame out?
Or die.
You really have a thing about James Hardy. I don't know what it is, but I know you well enough that your mind just always goes there.
Dude, when you soft toss me that shit, I smash it out of the park.
You're the worst. You're a terrible human being. So, it's this thing of, guys, we have a special talent. Yes, it's a lot of money. Do you know what we would do with that money? We would spend it on more defensive ends. We would spend it on more things that maybe we don't need, but I don't know that. Because all I know is that Josh Allen wasn't this Josh Allen until he had Stefon Diggs. Now, I'm not in the camp of the person who says that that's what he owes his success to. But it's worth noting he's been at his most effective when he has Stefon Diggs. As would any quarterback. If Miami had Stefon Diggs to pair with a Tyreek Hill, to pair with a Jalen Waddle, they would probably be in the Super Bowl right now. If the Chargers had a Stefon Diggs, if Houston had a Stefon Diggs,
they got Tank Dell.
But they didn't have him when it mattered down the stretch.
Well, yeah, his leg was missing.
So it's this idea that there are a lot of really competitive football teams that would kill to have that guy on their roster. We're here talking about cap hits and what we would do with that money as if history hasn't taught us that the money that we're going to spend rarely ever ends up being what we thought it was going to be. I mean, if that's the case, then everyone will point at the Dolphins and goes, look how many titles that they bought with all these giant free agency spendings. The Ndamukong Suh moves and things like this that never materialize in success. It's just embarrassing. We have to stop. I mean, we as a fan base have to get together and say, listen, we're not going to do any more of this, right? If the national media wants to make this a thing that they bang the drum on, great. I'm not going to fight them on it. If the local media is going to spend hours literally sitting around analyzing the semantics around, well, he did say where there's smoke, there's fire, so what is he thinking? What does he mean when he says the word and here instead of the? Just, I would rather you just put a bag over my head and waterboard me with pool cleaner. Like, that's it. I'd rather do that than have any more of these conversations. I will say that I understand the frustration because when you look at where the Bills stack up, Chris, it's not great. You know, our friend Doug Roloski was supposed to be in studio with us tonight, and I had a whole conversation planned in my head about the Bills and Dolphins, Jesus Christ, the Bills and Lions, and this idea that we kind of ended up with the same sort of disappointment. It happened in different ways. But you had this season where it was like, oh, no one could believe that this run even happened, right? Chris, first of all, no one could believe that the Lions made it as far as they did because they're the Lions.
Yeah.
The Bills were dead in the water. They were dead in the playoff water. And then just rattled off inexplicable win streak to steal the division, make the playoffs, win a home playoff game, lose a home playoff game in heartbreaking fashion. And it's like, we're kind of in the, like, both teams lost heartbreakers at the gun, different circumstances, but at the same time, what Nate and I touched on last week was this idea that it's like, at least their coach acknowledged how hard it's going to be to get back there. Like, Dan Campbell is well aware of how difficult it is to get back. You don't just make title games. When you look at the Minnesota Vikings, Chris, they made the title game because of Stefon Diggs, the Minnesota Miracle. That play that he was a part of propelled them to the NFC title game. And that franchise has not been back there since. And they look farther away than they probably ever have. Maybe not ever, but at least in the last 10 years, we'll call it. So with that in mind, it's hard. The game of football is hard, and the salary cap plays a big role in that. Chris, if you want to pull up the Spotrac track calculator, or cap space tracker.
Cap tracker?
Yes, sir. Every team's cap space, all 32 football teams. What I find funny is that the coach of a football team who is 7th in the NFL in available cap space as of today, before restructures, before any negotiations, before cuts, has $50 million in cap space to play with. Again, this is why Nate and I kind of criticize Sean McDermott. Because a coach who has money and draft picks and things at his disposal and a solid team in front of him and an offense that he knows he can trust.
And coordinators that are coming back.
Yes. He's got all these things. He's got all this continuity. He's got all this money, and yet there he is on the podium in the moment going, it's going to be incredibly difficult for us to get back here. Meanwhile, our coach will not acknowledge that dynamic. Now, whether that makes him tough or whether that makes him whether it's just him giving us lip service, McDermott refuses to acknowledge the fact that we are the total inverse. Chris, you want to scroll all the way down. The Detroit Lions are 7th. Let's go find out where Buffalo is in the NFL. Oh, that's right. 31st in the NFL at negative $51.8 million. It's hard. Right? Like it's really difficult to parse all of these things. Like, it's disappointing to see us not in the Super Bowl. Josh Allen said as much at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am this past weekend. He was like, I'm tired of playing in this. I should be playing football this weekend. Like, regardless of who wins, like, the Bills and every other team in the NFL on Monday are going to start their progression towards 2024. And who makes it, who doesn't, who improves, who doesn't. There's a lot of flux. There's a lot of things moving around here. And I look at the salary cap as the first thing as far as how are we going to stack up with the rest of the AFC picture. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's daunting. Like, if you just take a look at the macro in the AFC as a whole, Chris, the bottom 3 teams, the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and the Los Angeles Chargers.
Is there a reason you don't include the Saints?
Well, no. I'm saying in the AFC.
Okay.
Just for playoff purposes. Bills, Dolphins, Chargers. Bottom 3 AFC teams in terms of cap space. It's hilarious. How did the Chargers end up in a place, Chris, where somehow they haven't made the play? They have one playoff loss to their credit in 4 years, but they're negative 44 million. Like, is this why Tom Telesco was fired? I don't even think it's the losses. I think it's the fact that you lost and then also spent a ton of money to be a loser.
Do you know who Telesco hired as head coaches in his 10 years?
Mm-mm. Please tell me you have a list.
Staley, Mike McCoy, Anthony Lynn. And I did that all off of memory. Those are the coaches. I'll pull it up, but those are his coaches. Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley, and who did I miss?
Hang on, I got you right here. Okay. So, Tom Telesco, Google me when he started.
He was there for 10 years.
Okay,
so 12.
So 2012. So Norv Turner was gone. McCoy, Lynn, Staley, Smith. You look at you. Look at you. Oh, I'm proud of you.
All off of memory.
God. It is always fun when I find out that you might not get movies, you might not get music references or pop culture, but at least you know a thing or two about football.
I 100% get comedy movie references. Do you want to break down the fourth wall?
Sure.
So
why wouldn't we?
Yeah, so I told you before we started recording this podcast, I've looked into this just for YouTube. Let's not swear for 10 to 15 minutes. Let's try to hit that target, no swearing, first 10 to 15 minutes of this podcast. And I don't even think we got 4 minutes in before something. But I also had a bit plugged in that we could have played if we got to that 15-minute mark with no swearing, which is the piece from Old School. All you got to do is say earmuffs. Then you can say, fuck, shit, bitch, cock, balls. Yeah.
Damn it.
I'm just trying to prove a point. You don't need to celebrate it, Frank. I have movie references.
We're terrible people, guys.
You know what would be a good exercise? Go back to whatever year McCoy got hired, whatever year Anthony Lynn got hired, and go look at the other coaches that the Chargers had interviewed that were way better. The first one that comes to mind, I don't think that they would even be in this position to have Jim Harbaugh as head coach if they hired Brian Daboll instead of Brandon Staley.
No, Daboll would have made them mediocre.
No, he would have rocked and rolled with Herbert.
You think?
Yeah.
So anyway, go back to the salary cap list. So here's the problem. The Bills are at the basement of the AFC. Basement of the AFC. And what's frustrating is that when you look at the top of the league, who has it? Like, Chris, scroll up to the top of that list there. Tennessee Titans, I'm not worried about them. Nobody is. What's funny is they're talking about moving on from Derrick Henry and they have $73 million in cap space. Sure, you make the decision if you want to. He's not going to be unemployed for long. New England Patriots are second with $70 million. But the next group is what bugs me, and it's the Colts, the Texans, and the Bengals slotting at 4th, 5th, and 6th in the entire NFL in available cap space. And that's where things get dicey, because they're good teams. They're teams that all showed the Bengals, even without Joe Burrow, still made a playoff run. They made a run at it and just fell short. The Texans made the playoffs, dominated in a home game, and then ran out of gas on the road. The Colts were right there in a win-and-in scenario with Houston. So it's like, what do you... These are competitive teams that are well coached.
You know what I see?
And they're going to have a lot of reinforcements coming.
You know what I see So 3 of the top 5 teams with cap to spend, Houston, Indianapolis, and Tennessee, all within the same division, all most likely depends what Tennessee does. I'm assuming it's going to be Will Levis as their starter. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of these teams is going to put that money to use on that line to protect that investment that they have. Will Levis, AR-15, and CJ Stroud.
I'm not going to lie. I expect to see a spending spree in the AFC South. I expect to see them. It's kind of almost like a war of attrition. They're going to fight with each other over a lot of high-priced offensive linemen, wide receiver talent, Like the AFC South is going to see a lot of upgrades. It's almost why I feel bad for the Jaguars. It's almost like the Jaguars had a window to compete and they missed it. And now the rest of the division is going to catch up to them pretty quickly. I don't know. It just feels that way. But so then I look at that and I say, okay, I look at where the AFC is going. The Chiefs, who just own Buffalo in the postseason, they're way ahead of us in terms of available cap. They're going to get better. Some of the other fringe competitors are going to be able to spend and be able to retain and be able to do things that we can't. Well, we have to just trust that Josh is so talented, he can get us there. And at the same time, we have a lot of warts to fix, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then, so Chris, it almost makes it sound like the best road to the playoffs for the Bills is the AFC Championship, AFC East title, right?
You would think so.
You would think so. So where do our divisional opponents stack up? I mean, we already talked about New England, but I think New England is... What incentive does New England have to go on a spending spree right now? None. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback. They don't even know who they're... Like, I think somebody with the last name Elliott is going to be making the picks. But do they have a de facto GM?
I don't think so.
So at this point, I don't expect them to be strong contenders in free agency this year. Because I think that there's an acknowledgement that this isn't a one-year fix. We actually have to tear this thing down and rebuild it from the ground up. Where are the Jets? Help me find the Jets on this
Jets
list.
are at 20.
Okay.
Just a 7.5.
$7.5 million. And you look at what they're doing, they're going to have to completely rebuild their offensive line. They're also going to have departures at every single level of the defense. It's going to hurt their overall depth. They're going to have to do work there, or they're going to have to draft and rely on rookies, which has been a mixed bag. They've done well. They've also done poor, just like most GMs. Joe Douglas is on the hot seat. And it's one of these things, if you don't have a ton of money because you spent a lot of it on guys like Allen Lazard, good job. And then you look at the Dolphins. Go all the way down to Buffalo. Chris, how do you as the Dolphins have almost the exact same cap situation as Buffalo?
I have no idea.
So what I did was I pulled up the Bills depth chart. Chris, why don't you pull up the Our Lads depth chart for Miami for me? So when I think about this and I see a team that's also $51 million behind the eight ball, I assume that there has to be a good reason for it. Like, where did your money go? What elite talents do you have? How many Pro Bowlers do you have? Do you have high-end talent that hasn't been injured coming back at enough positions that you can just roll into next year thinking you're going to be competitive? Chris, take a look at this list. They're going to be losing half their wide receiver room from last year. Scroll down for a second. Down. Okay. Yeah, the highlighted ones, yeah. Unrestricted free agents. Okay, I just wanted to confirm this. So, Nick Needham is a guy that they probably really could have used this year based on how he played historically as a nickel corner. Not good. Yeah, here we go. Oh, here's the free agent list. This is hilarious. Jerome Baker, one of their starting linebackers that they didn't have all year. That they sorely missed when he was gone. He's out there. Their starting center is now a free agent. And they're going to have to... And they were only good when Connor Williams was in the game. Christian Wilkins, Braxton, Andrew Van Ginkel.
They didn't give Wilkins a extension?
Not yet. Deshaun Elliott, safety, who they really relied on for depth. There's all of these players that they kind of the guys at Robert Hunt. He's been a very, very good guard when he's healthy. He's coming off an injury-marred season. What can you get him for? He's also 28 years old. Now, go back to that Our Lads page. Look at... I like seeing it in this. They're missing, or at least have free agents coming at both the backup level for cornerbacks, linebackers, defensive line. Raekwon Davis, their only nose tackle, he's coming up as a free agent. Scroll up. Let's look at the offense. Their line has 1, 2, 3 starters listed for free agency, plus Kendall Lamb, who wasn't good, but he was sufficient. Wasn't great, but he was sufficient at tackle. He's also going to hit the bricks. And they have the same money to work with that we do. Oh, and by the way, they don't have a Josh Allen. They don't have a Josh Allen to paper over all these fucking problems that you have in the offensive line and that you have in the wide receiver room. They have... Chris, they're losing Tyler Kroft. Tyler Kroft is leaving the Dolphins tight end room.
They don't use tight ends, right?
Do you know that he's their most accomplished tight end? He leads all of the tight ends currently on the Miami Dolphins roster in touchdowns.
I thought they didn't use tight ends.
They don't.
That's why they got rid of, Gesicki.
Well, I think they got rid of Gesicki because he sucks. I think we saw that. And that
a lot of players within the Miami organization were having a tough time deciding between Blake and Gesicki because they look alike. They couldn't decide who was who. So then
we got to get this distraction
so they got rid of
out
Gesicki.
So ultimately, everyone in our division is going to have problems. Our best and probably easiest road to the playoffs is just winning the division. I don't like you thought this year's wild card race looked ugly. It's going to take a lot to make it as a wild card in the AFC next year. Now, I know there's people going, well, look at things change. He tore his, what's his face? Ayahuasca cat, the ayahuasca kid there. He tore his ACL, PCL, Achilles, doesn't matter. He fucking folded in front of everybody on 9/11. I joked at the time that it was the second biggest tragedy that ever happened in our city on national television. Which in retrospect is a dark joke. Like, I get that. Like, I know we have a dark sense of humor personally, Chris, but that was We're not good people. Everybody has a hard road back. And I think that's... There are some teams that are going to make jumps next year and insert themselves into the first overall seed, second overall seed, third overall seed conversation that we're not used to hearing. It remains win your division and let the rest of it figure itself out, because that's our best road forward. Otherwise, the wild card race is going to get nuts, and I don't want to be in that crowd. I really don't. And I feel like...
Look at that. Who's who?
Wait, what? That's it?
Blake's on the left. Mike Gesicki's on the right.
Wow. That's wild. Okay. All right. Nope. You know what? I could see firing a guy over that. Just be like, listen, you get out of here. We don't need you. Our own roster, though, is going to look a little bit different. And next week, we're going to have a guest in the studio to kind of walk through just to kind of tease it, but we have a guest coming in to walk us through and walk with us through what some of the changes that this roster is going to go through and some of the places they're going to have to pay attention to when rebuilding a roster that they think can compete in the AFC East next year. Because I feel like that's where our focus has to be. It can't be, hey, go get the 1 seed. It's going to be, hey, can we win this and just get hot at the right time? According to Pro Ant from Cover 1, Anthony Prohaska, one of my favorites, the Bills are looking at the loss of over 2,800 snaps along the defensive line. Epinesa, Floyd, Phillips, DeQuan Jones, Linval Joseph, Settle, Lawson, and Ford. You're losing most of the defensive line from this season to free agency. The wide receiver core is going to need help because I think we all know Gabe Davis has played his last snap as a Buffalo Bill.
Everyone knows that.
Okay. So he's played his last snap as a Buffalo Bill. And at the same time, you look at what's left behind them, right? Well, what do we have? Trent Sherfield, Justin Shorter. not even Trent Sherfield. Justin Shorter, Stefon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, and Deontay Hardy. Those are your wide receivers. Now what?
Plus whoever we draft.
Yeah, well, and this is where I caution Bills fans. Guys, it's about the, like, what has this team shown you year over year over year? It's the fact that they prioritize trench players because trench players who are good make more money than trench players who are mediocre, correct?
Yeah.
Wide receivers get paid, you have a star like Stefon Diggs who makes $30 million. But you can get by with guys who are just making okay money. You can get by with guys who you drafted and groomed over time, but those trench players are harder to find than adequate wide receiver talent. Just go ask the Chiefs about that. Like, they're getting by with nobody. With no stars at wide receiver, they are still putting up numbers because they have a star quarterback. Now, I don't think it's the right track for the Bills because I think that we have more offensive needs. I think that we've been neglecting it because we've taken the approach of neglecting the offense because we have Josh. But that doesn't mean they won't keep doing it. How they approach this draft is going to tell us a lot about how serious this organization is about winning a championship rather than just, hey, we like being in the conversation. We like the fact that there's asses in seats. We like the fact that we have a full stadium. We like the fact that we, once in a while, get to make some money off the gate during the postseason. I think that they have to recognize that. And if they don't, it tells you a lot about where their priorities lie. But don't get me wrong, they will spend premium draft capital in the trenches. If they double dip, Chris, the world's going to burn down, isn't it?
Yeah.
And at the same time, they might just do it again. I don't know. It's not all doom and gloom, right? Like, we have changes that might be for the best, like Babbage being our defensive coordinator. The fact that he's still staying here, well, I don't know who's calling plays, I don't care. Our linebacker performance and the growth that we've seen with Babbage here should continue, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Which means Bernard, Milano, Dorian Williams has room to grow. He's a key to this. If you're paring down your roster, it's Dorian Williams who doesn't cost you anything versus a Tyler Matakevich versus any other special teams ace. Oh, wait a minute. I have a backup linebacker that I can actually let go play linebacker for once? Shocker! Who knew that that was a thing, that you could have 3 adequate linebackers on a team? Give me Terrell Dodson, who actually didn't look all that terrible, as a 4th one, and maybe we have what looks like a real linebacker room for the first time in forever. Jaleel Day, new cornerback coaching philosophy. I think that when Butler left, a lot of people assumed it was because he didn't get the DC job here, and he saw that the road to that job was going to be, it's not there. It's not going to materialize fast enough. I'll take a lateral move to another franchise so I can so I can at least get a shot at being a coordinator someday. Well, I'll tell you what, he brings a new coaching philosophy. Now, the guys over at Cover One have done a great job of breaking down some of the different things he teaches in terms of how to play man in zone, but also play man in man, and how to play contact in man, how to play bump and run. How the level of physicality it takes to play zone properly. If you want to play zone, but you want to do it tight, how to do that. He's put on clinics where he's been teaching DBs this throughout, like he's coached good college defensive players using these skill sets. And what I say is, Chris, given our cap constraints and the things we have going on, wouldn't it be a breath of fresh air if somebody could find a way to coach up Kyer Elam?
Yeah.
The kid has chops. You see it here and there. It's not every play, but it's on a lot of plays. He's got ball skills. He made an interception in the Chiefs game when we beat them last year. In the end zone, it was a great pick. He makes a great interception in the Steelers game this year when we beat them. He almost had 2 interceptions in that game. Right there on the... He made an interception in the Miami Dolphins game when we beat them. He's got ball skills. He's aggressive. Can you mold him into being what your defense needs him to be? You've now got a different voice in the room that if they can just turn that guy around, Rasul Douglas, who we were all clapping for, hey, what a great addition. It took that guy a hot minute to latch on in the NFL. He was drafted by the Eagles and then went on to play for how many teams? I don't even know. I think the Green Bay was maybe his third stop.
For who?
Rasul Douglas.
I believe he was drafted by Green Bay.
No, he was drafted by the Eagles. Yeah, there we go, football knowledge guy. See, you flew too close to the sun, Icarus. Rasul Douglas. Bang.
Oh, he played with a lot of teams.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The dude has been around. Philadelphia, then to Carolina, then to the Raiders, and then that
Raiders, Texans, Cardinals, all practice squad.
Yeah, the dude was not in the NFL for a hot minute. Now, we're talking about him as a fan base like, thank God we have this guy, because next year he's going to be a part of this core. He's aggressive, he's physical, he sees the ball. It's a lot of coaching, and it's a lot of right place, right time. I'm hoping that we don't miss the window on Kyer Elam the way that the Eagles missed it on Rasul Douglas. Because it's clear that Kyer Elam has some skill. It's just, how can I make that skill work for me? I'm excited to see that guy got added to the staff, because if nothing else, he can help bring something different, bring a different voice to the coaching room that's going to ultimately prove whether or not this guy can come back. And if he can, you're talking about a room that might not need Trey White to be Trey White. It might not need a guy who's your number one, because you have Douglas, you have Benford. And also, by the way, I've got a guy who's an athlete who finally understands the nuances of what this defense is in terms of the mix of zone and man coverage. How physical you need to be, how you need to be able to play zone, and how to keep your eyes on a guy and stay in his hip pocket. I feel like it can't hurt, right? It can't.
No.
And then to switch sides, the offensive side of the ball, Brady staying with the team. Continuity. Brady staying with the team. He's the first offensive coordinator who could make a running back of ours look like a feature player in the offense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You have this. He also was used on wheel routes and different receiving patterns that we have not used a running back on in years. Probably because we didn't have a guy with his skill set and Dorsey just didn't trust him to be able to execute it. I don't know. I love this. I like the coaching hires. I like the way that this stuff is trending in terms of these new assistants. Last week, Nate and I railed about the offensive thing. And he called, what did he say? The lack of an offensive coaching search was scared?
Yeah.
Okay. At least Brady made it look more effective. The offense, like the running back position in particular. You've got guys like Kelly and Thurman who keep pounding the drum of a running back has to be involved. Josh can't be a man on an island. Well, you did it this year. Can you expand on that? How do you expand on that? How do you do it with no money? I don't know. That's their job to figure out. It's my job to sit here, slug beers, and pontificate on. It's not fair, but them's the breaks. I know that this is going to be difficult. This climb back to being a AFC East contender, an AFC contender. I don't expect us to be favored by Vegas, Chris. I expect to see a whole slew of names. And the Bills should take it as disrespect. For the players who are left on the roster, they should take it as disrespect. But they will not be listed as favorites in the AFC this upcoming season. But I'm okay with that. This franchise has a lot of work to do. We don't even have a defensive line right now. It's like the movie Dodgeball. We don't even know who our best player is. But what I do know is that the foundation is here to build something that can still be competitive. And that's all you ever ask for, right?
Yeah.
In that way, No matter what happens on Sunday, no matter what happens in the coming weeks, I'm here. I'm here for all of it. And I know you will be too. I appreciate everybody who's been showing up all season long. Thank you for giving us your time and your ears, but for tonight, we gotta get the hell out of here. And your eyes. Yeah. You guys are looking at us now. The YouTube work. The YouTube work is hilarious. I love the fact that this exists. But for tonight, we gotta get out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. Spend your Rock Pile Report.